Putin can't end the war in Ukraine without Russia collapse. Russian President Vladimir Putin has quietly expressed openness to discussing a Ukraine ceasefire deal with U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. Putin's purported position was divulged to Reuters by 5 Kremlin insiders and added ammunition to Trump's plans to freeze the Ukraine war at the start of his presidency. These are promising signs for Trump's agenda, but is Russia ready to negotiate? The Kremlin's rhetoric suggests that the answer to this question is an emphatic no. On Wednesday, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov declared that Putin has repeatedly said that any option of freezing the conflict won't work for us. Russia also rejected Turkey's peace plan for Ukraine. This proposal called for a freeze of current battle lines, no Ukrainian NATO accession for at least 10 years, and the deployment of international troops to a demilitarized borderline in eastern Ukraine. These terms closely mirror the peace plan that Trump will outline to Putin. Unless the U.S. accedes to Putin's maximalist vision, which includes occupying Ukrainian-held areas of Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and Donetsk, and permanently ruling out Ukraine's NATO membership, Russia's short-term calculus on negotiations is unlikely to change, and it is equally unlikely that Trump will accede to Putin's far-fetched demands. Even the Russia-friendly Chinese and Brazilian peace plans do not go beyond freezing the conflict at current borders. Abandoning NATO's open-door policy under Russian pressure would deal a long-term blow to its credibility as an alliance bloc. While Russia is unlikely to negotiate in good faith, it still sees tactical value in diplomacy. As Russian fighter jets and Wagner Group mercenaries aided Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's brutal reconquest of Aleppo, Russia participated actively in the Astana peace process. While Russian forces perpetrated the Bucha massacre, Putin's chief diplomats toyed with the idea of ending the Ukraine war at the March 2022 Istanbul talks. Putin's phone call with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and openness to ceasefire talks with Trump are the latest manifestations of this playbook. For the Kremlin, diplomacy is a tool of psychological warfare and a stalling tactic that facilitates military breakthroughs. Once negotiations begin, Russia will almost certainly cite Ukraine's use of ATACMS long-range missiles on its territory and occupation of Kursk as irrevocable sticking points. Russia wants Ukraine to make unilateral concessions on both fronts. To stop Ukrainian ATACMS attacks, Russia could play to the sensibilities of Trump and his inner circle. As National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has highlighted escalation risks associated with Ukraine's ATACMS use, and Trump warns regularly about World War II, Russia will ratchet up its nuclear brinkmanship. Prominent Russian commentators like former Kremlin advisor Sergei Markov argue that Biden approved Ukraine's use of ATACMS to sabotage Trump's presidency. Russian diplomats will use negotiations to convey this narrative to Trump, as it plays into the president-elect's mistrust of the U.S. foreign policy establishment. On Kursk, Russia will have more difficulty achieving its preferred outcome. Ukraine is determined to hold on to territory in Kursk, as it wants to secure a land swap deal for Russian-occupied parts of Kharkiv or the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant. Russia will likely continue its war of attrition in Kursk as negotiations commence. Even if these issues are resolved, Russian obstructionism is unlikely to end. Putin sees the war's continuation as vital for regime stability in Russia. The military-industrial boom continues to prevent socio-economic unrest. Led by fascist philosopher Alexander Dugin, many Russian ultranationalists see Putin's acquiescence to the 2015 Minsk Accords with Ukraine as a naive act of betrayal. By authorizing a full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022, Putin struck a Faustian bargain with Russian ultranationalists. The June 2023 Wagner Group mutiny underscored the threat of ultranationalist dissent, and Putin sees continued war as the ideal way to appease this militarized faction. The most effective way to change Putin's calculus is to further steepen the costs of Russian aggression. Tighter sanctions could eventually pop Russia's wartime economic bubble and degrade its military supply chains. Long-range Ukrainian strikes could disrupt Russian energy production and thwart the entry of more North Korean forces onto the front lines. Facing a sagging economy and diminishing returns on the battlefield, Putin could be compelled to negotiate in a serious way. Russia is determined to outlast the West's support for Ukraine and sees diplomacy as a tactic to achieve that goal. When negotiating with Putin, Trump must remain attuned to this reality.